Good day and welcome to the 1st of February. Now this is the second in the series of videos we're doing on what we are sowing each month. So you may have seen the January sowing video, which we'll put a link to above. And this is the second one. This is the February seed sowing and planting video. Now, where January was a seed sowing video and all of the seeds were sown in the polytunnel, this month it's a little bit of a mix. There are some seeds sown in the polytunnel, there are going to be some seeds sown in our house and they will be upstairs, and there are other seeds that are going to be sown directly in the ground. So it's a bit of a mix. It's a sort of start of things beginning to bulk up a bit. Not like March. March will be major seed sowing time, but February's a good time. Got Bertie here, Bertie the Box, and first of all you may notice that I've got some seeds stuck up here. They're in my January slot, but they're standing up. The reason they're standing up is this is parsley and spring onion seeds that I sowed in January. There are still seeds left in both of these, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move these seeds into March. The reason I'm doing that is I want to have successional sowings of spring onions and also of parsley. So when it comes to March, I will see that I need to sow those again. I've been pretty poor at successional sowings of things over the past few years. I do my first sowing and then I think, oh great, I've done that. And then it gets to 6 weeks along, something like that, or in case of radishes it might be sooner. And I think, oh, I must sow those because I sowed them a few weeks ago, or 6 weeks ago in the case of spring onions. I need to sow them again, and I simply forget. So by putting them into March slot, when it comes to March, I will know that I need to sow those. So back to February. What are we sowing and planting in February? Here we have, where's March? Here we have all of our seeds. He says, trying to get it out of the box. These are our seeds for February sowing. There seems quite a lot. I'm going to move Bertie along a bit and those. There seems quite a lot, but in some cases we're just going to be sowing a couple of seeds of each of these, particularly when it comes to tomatoes. Last year I think we grew 48 plants of tomatoes, and this year we certainly want the same amount as last year. But let's just start off with rhubarb. Last year I sowed 3 types of rhubarb: Champagne, Victoria and Glaskins Perpetual. These came from Brendan, thanks very much Brendan, and most of the plants went to our sales stall at the Hanwell Carnival last year. It's in June each year, and the plants that came from most of these seed sowings that we did a year ago went to that stall and raised money for our allotment association. So I am going to be sowing more of these. The Glaskins Perpetual didn't really germinate that well, so I do want some Glaskins Perpetual for us, and we didn't have any from last year. I kept 2 plants back, but unfortunately they died. And I do know that the person that bought 2 Glaskins Perpetual, theirs are still going. So I'm going to sow some more this year. Let me just put those to one side. Let's talk about flowers. Going to be sowing some flowers. Poppy, which we were sent by one of our subscribers. Didn't say who it was, but thank you very much for sending that. I think it came free with a magazine. It was the Amateur Gardening magazine that came with. Thank you for that. And Echinacea and Cosmos we're going to be sowing quite early. If they don't get away, there's plenty of seeds in this packet to sow another batch. Right, Celeriac. Celeriac is a great vegetable when I like it, and not a great vegetable when we don't. Though last year I didn't grow any and I missed growing it, so we're going to grow it again this year and see how we do. It's great particularly in salads. We really like it in salads, grated. It adds a celery-ness to a salad, to a grated salad that obviously you get from celery, but it gives it a different sort of texture. Roasted, they're really good, and we're going to try a recipe that we saw, if these grow of course. We're going to try a recipe of a whole roasted celeriac in the autumn. Right, I'm going to keep those till later. Let's start talking about the seeds. Those are all outside. Brussels sprout seeds. Now what we normally do is we normally sow some Brussels sprouts, but we also buy the Brussels sprouts that you get at Lidl. And they usually come out about March. They have quite a lot of different plants in March, sort of early April. But we're usually far better with the ones that we sow ourselves. And I'm going to be sowing Groninger this year. Now Vivi has given us these seeds. She has not had a great deal of luck growing Brussels sprouts, which is incredible because of course her garden is so productive. I mean, I can't believe you won't know Vivi, but if you don't, what Vivi did next, and Vivi's kitchen garden as well, do go and have a look. We'll put a link to what Vivi did next. Yeah. Her brassicas are usually stunning. I mean, enviable cabbages and brassicas and Cavallo Nero, just incredible. But she hasn't been able to grow Brussels sprouts successfully. So she's given us 2 lots of seed. One is Groninger, which we know well, and the other is Red Ball, which we are not going to be planting quite at the moment. I think the thing with brassicas that I hope we all know, and if you're new to growing maybe you don't, is that when you plant out your plants, when you put your plants into the soil, so once you've sown them, they've grown into healthy plants, maybe 6-8 inches tall, good few leaves. When you plant them out, you need to plant them deep. They're quite happy to be planted, not at the level that they were as plants, but deeper than that. You can, if you've got a 6-inch plant, 8-inch plant, you can usually put a good 3 or 4 inches of that stem into the soil, down into the soil, make a big hole, deep hole rather, plant them right down and bury them deep. And then when you have done that, make sure you use your knuckles or the palm of your hands to really bed them in, because brassicas love being in really firm soil. So make sure you do that. Another thing with brassicas in particular, and Brussels sprouts, I think, essentially, is they don't like windrock. So even though you may push them into the ground really sturdily, as the roots grow, they stabilise the plant, obviously. But if you get really bad winds coming across, a brassica, a cabbage, and particularly Brussels sprouts, where the weight as the Brussels grow is at the top of the stalk, they get top heavy and you can get windrock. So I would suggest, if you think you're going to get windrock on your site in your brassicas, and particularly Brussels sprouts, do stake them, because they will benefit from staking. Obviously they benefit from good fertiliser, whether that be your own or chicken manure pellets, something like that, or obviously good compost or compost tea. They love nutrient soil, so make sure you're feeding them well. But do be wary of windrock. If windrock gets to a Brussels sprout in particular, or Brussels sprout plant, the roots will come away a bit from the soil underneath, and the energy will go back into trying to stabilise that plant rather than grow your Brussels sprouts. So you might end up with really small Brussels sprouts because actually the plant is trying to stabilise itself down below the soil rather than give you lovely green or red nutritious Brussels sprouts to eat. So do be wary of that. We are going to be sowing some all-year cauliflower, another Brassica, and we have only been successful in cauliflower a couple of times, and they were fabulous, but then they went quite bitter. So giving that another go. Then where are we going to next? Let's go to our tomatoes and peppers. Trying to find this one. We grew Vivi's Orange Bell last year, and the plants did far better than seed that we had bought previously. And we got a really good amount of peppers from the pepper plants, but only one of them turned orange. A lot of Vivi's turned orange. I'm not quite sure why ours didn't, but they are going to be sown indoors this month. All of the others, just going back to all of the others are being sown in the polytunnel that I've already mentioned. So this is going to be the first sowings in our house. So Vivi's Orange Bell peppers, most probably middle of February, I will be sowing those. Cucumber, Marketmore. It's a bog standard one, and we like to try and eat the cucumbers when they are young, because Richard doesn't like seeds in cucumbers. So the younger a cucumber is, the less likely those seeds will have developed to maturity. Obviously the whole point of a fruit is to develop the seeds so that the seeds can be used for, it usually naturally falls on the ground, the fruit will rot away, and then the seeds will grow again. So we're growing Marketmore, bog standard as I say. We have had a few ideas of cucumbers that can be grown that have very few seeds in them, particularly like the mini munch cucumbers that you can get. But I haven't been able to find some of the suggested ones online. So if you do have any suggestions of cucumbers that have very few seeds in, please do let us know. Right, now we're moving on to the big time of sowing. Tomatoes. We grew, as I said, almost 50 plants of tomatoes last year. We're veggie, as you know, we use an awful lot of tomatoes. We haven't quite got into bottling them or canning them yet. I'm too wary about botulism, quite frightened about that, not surprisingly. But a lot of you do can and do bottle things. Most of ours are frozen, and that is either frozen fresh, or they are cut up and roasted and then cooled and then frozen, or made into a tomato sauce and frozen. What are we growing this year? Amish paste has become our go-to tomato, so we are definitely growing that again. By the way, all the names, because I don't think I'll get onto the varieties of each of these tomatoes or other seeds that we're growing, so all of the varieties are going to be in the description below. Roma was quite successful last year, but didn't really do as well as I'd hoped, so we're giving it another go. Bulgarian, pink Bulgarian is a bit like Amish paste. It's egg shaped and is pinker. It's sort of like pearlescent pink, so we're definitely doing those again. We have some Amish paste left over from the Real Seed Company, Real Seed Catalogue, and pink Bulgarian, but we also have our own saved Amish paste seeds. We're doing Coeur de Boue, which this one is an Italian one, not the French variety, but they're the same. We're going to do our Bitchy Litchy tomato again, and that is for the bees. Now this is one that has horrendous thorns on it, but it's fabulous. Now, thank you to Gabriella. Gabriella sent us via Vivi save seeds from her tomatoes. As some of you may know, I have Barrett's esophagus, so I have acid in my stomach that comes up, And I need to be wary about the type of foods that I eat, and particularly the acidity of foods as it hits my stomach. And cherry tomatoes have been one of those things that, even though I adore them, I haven't found a cherry tomato that is low in acid that it doesn't affect me. Now, Gabriella has sent some super sweet yellow cherries, and also a Cherokee yellow that, or it's similar to Cherokee yellow and has orange stripes. So it'll be interesting to see how those two fare. Now also cherry tomatoes, because they don't have to put quite so much energy into growing the big tomato, they generally mature a little bit earlier, a few weeks earlier. So fingers crossed for that. And also Gabriella sent us some red ox heart, which are like the coeur de bout. Those are non-fermented ones. These are from her save seed, and we'll put about the fermented and non-fermented and saving seed video that we have done previously, so I'll put a link to that. So thanks very much, Gabriella, for all of those. Now, Vicky, wow, thank you very much, Vicky. Vicky has sent a whole host of tomato seeds. Literally, I think there must be 10 varieties here, plus some beans, not sure what that was, plus some beans, and also some multicoloured carrots. So thanks very much for those, Vicky. I'm going to look at all of the varieties. I think I will keep some of these varieties for next year. My big issue is always keeping track of my labels, i.e. labelling things and then keeping track of labels. And when you do grow seeds that you might not have grown before, unless you're growing them just solely on their own, so like the Celeriac, we're just growing one variety of Celeriac, and that's Monarch. Here we're going to be growing, I think, most probably in the region of 3, 10, maybe 16 varieties of tomatoes. I know many of you grow many more than that, but we're going to be growing maybe 12 to 16 varieties of tomatoes this year. And what I really need to keep on top of is making sure that I label things correctly. So I label them usually at the beginning quite well, but then when I'm transplanting seedlings into pots or potting things on, sometimes I sort of put them in the ground and then I go, oh, I've forgotten to label that. So with these, I'm really going to try and label. I did a far better job at labelling last year than I have previous years, so hopefully this year I can get that little bit better as well. Right, those are all of the things that we're going to be sowing either in our polytunnel or indoors. You will have seen our tomato and pepper sowing videos already if you've watched us regularly. If you haven't, I'll put a link to that now so that you can see what we have done previously. Ground cherries. This again is going to be sown here, so it's not the final one. We were given these ground cherries a couple of years ago. I think it was it Sandy Mac? I think Sandy gave us these, and we didn't grow them the first year. We did grow them last year, and they are like tiny cherries with a sort of wrapper, like those Chinese gooseberries that you get. And I think they are Chinese gooseberries, aren't they? I'm not sure. They didn't do well. We had some of them last year. I'm not quite sure how tall they're supposed to grow, but they only grew to about 4 or 5 inches, and we got maybe 10 off the 4 plants that we had. So we're going to give them another go this year and see if they do any better. Now we are coming to direct sowing. As you may have seen in our January tour and also in our February tour that will be coming up, we sowed broad beans back in, I think, early November. They took quite a while to come through. I was worried at some point that they had just been eaten by mice or they had rotted in the ground, because of course in 2019 we had such a wet autumn and beginning of winter that it was quite likely that peas and beans, other things that we put in the ground, were rotting. However, fortunately we had a sort of warm spell at the end of November and they all started poking through. And in fact we've had really good germination from the seeds that we sowed in November. However, now is a good time to sow broad beans. Check your varieties of broad beans, but now is generally a good time to sow most broad beans if you're in the UK. And where we do have one or two that have been nibbled and one that has not germinated, or if it has germinated it's been eaten, we're just going to pop a seed or two into the gap. It will mean that the seeds are going to obviously germinate much later than the ones that are growing at the moment, that are about 6 inches, 7 inches high, and it will mean that the harvest will be a little later. But you know what, it's a good idea to get them in. These seeds are here, I might as well use them. They will last till the sowing that we do in October or November this coming year, and of course we can save from our seed that hopefully will develop in the pods in May. So that's broad beans. We do have some crimson flowered broad beans, which I sowed a couple of years ago and they didn't do too well for us, and I'm just wondering, one person has said that we can grow a few things in a different area, and we're most probably going to, on their plot, and we're most probably going to grow pumpkins there, but in the meantime I might put in some of these crimson broad beans too. Kelly sent us some Oregon sugar pod Mangetout. We grew some from plants that we got from Lidl a couple of years ago and they were absolutely terrific. I can't remember, Kelly, apologies, if these have come from your, I think they've come from your mum. But if they come from you, I apologise for getting that wrong. But hey, it's come from Kelly and her family, so that's great. I'm sure you all know Kelly's Kitchen Garden. We'll put a link either above or down below. Kelly's fabulous. She is growing in Scotland and has quite a few challenges because of the dampness, because of the coldness, but is developing such an amazing plot up there. Truly inspirational and a fabulous cook as well. Anyway, Oregon sugar pod. These, like the broad beans, will be going directly into soil, into our edge beds. We have one edge bed which is ready to sow in now, and these will be sown into it. Finally, radish. As you may remember, radish is a bit of a bête noire of mine. It was broken, the challenge of growing it was broken a bit last year, where I grew some really good radish. But in that first batch of radish that grew really well, in successional sowings that I tried to do, they didn't grow quite so well. So fingers crossed. These are bog standard French breakfast, and it does say they can be sown outdoors from February onwards. So I'm going to sow those alongside the peas and expect to be able to harvest these well before the peas are up and beginning to go. So there we are. That is what we are sowing this month. Just thinking about next month. Next month traditionally is the month, or the 17th of March is traditionally, it is St. Patrick's Day, it's traditionally the day that many people will be growing their potatoes. Potatoes are already, seed potatoes are already in shops in Wilko and in B&M and in the garden centres. And there's great varieties, but they're usually the well-known varieties that are in these outlets. Do look at specialist catalogues if you want to grow something a bit different. The other day we received our gosh, is it Kestrel or is it Rocket? Kestrel. We received our Kestrel potatoes, our seed potatoes, and also our Charlotte seed potatoes. I think I showed those in Sunday chat last week. So we are going to be chitting those and keeping them nice and in sunlight, but not in cold, not in freezing cold, because we want them to chit, and we're going to do the normal egg box chitting. Now when you're buying seed potatoes, do make sure, or do try and get ones that aren't wrinkly. You want ones that are fat and may have little tiny chits on them. You don't want chits that are sort of 3 inches long or anything like that. A chit, by the way, is the root as it grows out, the growing tip rather, as it grows out from the potato. So make sure the potatoes are firm that you're buying, because the better quality seed potato you have, the more likely you are to have a decent crop from it. Now there are specialist potato days going on around the country. There's been a few in January, and there's quite a few more in February. So if you're looking for, or to grow a potato that is less well known, do Google potato days and see if there is one near you. Very often they team up with a Seedy Sunday as well. And tomorrow in Brighton is Seedy Sunday Day. I think Seedy Sunday started in Brighton, and it has really expanded and is now quite a big affair. But there are other Seedy Sundays around the country. A Seedy Sunday is where you get together and you swap seeds. So, you know, absolutely fantastic. So look out for your seed potatoes, because they're something you need to prepare now. Obviously, you need to buy them in advance for planting out when you want to plant them out. The longer you leave it, generally the smaller the choice that you get in the shops. So if you do want something a little bit different, plan ahead. Now, going back to Bertie, what I'm going to do is look at the seeds that I have sown in January and decide which of those I want to keep for sowing next year, which I hope will obviously still be viable, and I'm going to keep them in January. So my January 2020 slot becomes my January 2021 slot. Any seeds that I think I either don't want to keep or won't be viable, I'm going to offer to other allotment holders or community gardeners, or to other projects in the area like Catherine Buckham Meadow. They have a wonderful wildflower meadow there, and we have a number of wildflowers we won't be using, I think, so some of those will go to them. But yeah, other green projects in the area, if I think that they can use these seeds, then I'm going to give them away, because I would much rather end up with a really slim Bertie at the end of this year going into 2021 than the rather sort of full and fat Bertie that I have at the moment. So if you're not going to use seeds, give them away. There's no point in hoarding seeds. In fact, there's no point in hoarding anything, in my opinion, whether that be money or whether that be seeds. So see whether your seeds can be utilised by somebody else if you're not going to use them. Better other people get joy and benefit out of them than they sit in your box for forever, because they will stop being viable. So I think that's about it for what we are sowing in February. In fact, that is it for what we are sowing in February. We are not sowing any more. I may be repeating myself. I had to start the camera again because it stopped recording. But this is a month of sowing seed still. When we get into March, we start planting things out as well. So I will update you on all of that. We'll give you the whole month of March on the 1st of March. Was there anything else? I think that's about it. If you are thinking of sending us seeds, and thank you to all of those people who send us seeds, we really do appreciate it. Sometimes we get duplicate seeds and we do give those to other people. Sometimes we get seeds that we won't necessarily grow ourselves, and again, I hope that's okay with you, but we gift them to other people. I mean, really growing and gardening is all about sharing. I mean, certainly at our allotment plot, we have, you get given eggs, you give something in return, broad bean plants, and then you get given some Portuguese cabbage, as we were last year, which did so well for us. So I'm going to be gifting some of those seeds to other people. Do try and share. I know a lot of people find their allotment plot a fantastic solace, and that is superb if that's how you are. But do sort of think about others. If your seeds aren't going to be used, see if other people want to use them. So yeah, that is it. I will see you at the beginning of March, or on the 1st of March, for what we're sowing in March. This is the end of what we're sowing in February. It's a busier month than January, obviously, and March will be much busier than both of those months put together. You will be able to see what we have sown in the February plot tour, which will be coming up in a few days. Hopefully you've read the A Guernsey Gardener in London blog that came out a few days ago. Go to richardandpaul.com/blog for that. That is our Growing Hopes and Dreams. That's the title of that blog, our Growing Hopes and Dreams. And I'm not sure what the next one is going to be, but though that will come to mind very shortly and will be up in a few days' time. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks for subscribing. If you like what we do, give us a thumbs up. Do tell other people about us if you like what we're doing. There's no need to keep us to yourselves. And I hope you all have a good February. Bye.